This is the story of the wings over Dallas mid-air collision. The aviation community is a quite tight-knit community, and I know that some of the people watching this video would have known the victims of this crash quite well. I remember when this happened, and it was quite a shock to everyone in the community. Well, we finally know what happened on the 12th of November 2022, and I pray that it never happens again. Dallas Executive Airport doesn't really see a whole lot of action. It has a few commercial flights and a lot of general aviation flights. That's about it. But on that Saturday, it was a site of the Winds over Dallas airshow. The commemorative airforce would be one of the acts performing today. The commemorative airforce has taken it upon themselves to maintain old warbirds in flight-ready condition, and today's event would feature some of those planes. The planes would fly flight paths that would approximate historical missions that they would have flown. The bomber would fly low with its bomb bay doors open and then pretend to drop munitions, while pyrotechnics went off on the ground. The fighters would swarm near the plane in a way that they would have done so about 70 years ago during the height of World War II. So, how does all of this work? Well, it takes a lot of practice to pull this off, and the head honcho for an airshow would be the airboss. He's the one on the radio with the planes guiding them around. Do note that the airboss is not an air traffic controller. Think of the airboss as the conductor of an opera or the choreographer of a dance team. The airboss was situated on some tall stairs right near the intersection of the runways with an unobstructed view of the planes, and it was from here that he would guide the planes in and out of their patterns. There were two paths for the planes to fly along when near the crowds, the 500-foot line and the 1,000-foot line. These were lines drawn 500 and 1,000 feet from the crowds respectively. At 1:10 p.m., the B-17 took off from the runway, and at 1:15 p.m., a P-63 took off from the runway. It was showtime. Initially, everything was going well. The bomber group flew by the crowds along the 1,000-foot line, and the bombers were joined by the fighters. The airboss at this time was doing quite a bit. The airboss was managing the taxi, takeoff, and landing clearances for quite a few planes. He also controlled the leader aircraft that were performing at the time, which meant that they had to climb, descend, and turn to show the crowd what they came for on the command of the airboss. The airboss was also talking to the pyrotechnics crew so that they could set off the fireworks when the moment was just right. For today's show, there was a bomber group and a fighter group. The airboss was in contact with the leader of each group. Then the airboss would tell them how to fly, and the leaders would fly the pattern, and the other planes in their group would follow the leader. So here's the situation. There's 8 airborne planes flying complicated maneuvers. There's a B-29 on the ground that's taxiing to runway 31 to join the show. There's a PT-17 that's being cleared to land on runway 31. All of this was being controlled by the airboss. As the crowd looked on in awe, the B-17 came in from the left of the crowd in a left-hand turn to line up with the 1,000-foot line. A P-63 cut into the flight path of the B-17 itself in a left-hand turn and ended up crashing into the tail section of the B-17. Both aircraft plummeted to the ground. For the airboss, his worst nightmare had come to pass. Somehow, 2 planes that were supposed to be safely separated had come together, and now he had to make sure that the ensuing confusion did not cause another mid-air collision. In a frenzy, he sent the bombers in one direction, the fighters in another direction, hoping that see and avoid would keep them safe. I'll play the airboss's radio chatter right now, right after the crash, so that we can get a sense of what was going on.
Knock it off, roll the trucks, roll the trucks, knock it off, roll the trucks.
0 seconds.
Thank you very much. B-24, it's right turn, B-24, right turn, follow. Fighters, you go right there, stay right where you are, left turn, fighters, left turn. Knock it off, roll the trucks, let's go, roll the trucks. 5 Quebec, hold your position, B-29, hold your position. B-24, your right turn, SC2C, follow him. B-25, right turn, you got the B-24 off your left side. Go into the hold, everybody, go into the hold. Quebec,
Time
hold your position.
19:22 minutes 40 seconds.
B-25, B25, you're in the lead. Double dog, you're in the lead. You're going to the intersection. B24, you're following yellow road. Confirm.
0 seconds.
American fighters, I need you to go to the northwest corner, please. Northwest corner, fighters. 58 Quebec, continue your taxi. You're going up to runway 35. Quebec.
That audio clip hurts to listen every single time. So, how could this have happened? Well, a lot of things had to go wrong. The first question that you might have is, well, why didn't they see each other and avoid a collision? Well, see and avoid, while simple, can be used to keep planes apart if things aren't too complicated. But since both planes were in a turn, it was hard to do that. The P-63 was coming in from behind and above to the left of the B-17 and descending towards the show line. The NTSB carried out a study to see what the pilots of both planes could see as they merged. They found out that from the B-17, the P-63 would have been obscured until right before the collision. The P-63 would have had a better shot at spotting the B-17, as the B-17 was visible 32 to 4 seconds before the collision. But it was hard to see the plane as the livery that the B-17 was painted in blended in with the ground clutter, making it hard to see the bomber from the fighter. Besides, see and avoid required the pilots to be looking out and scanning for other planes. This is not something that you'd be doing in the middle of an air show, especially at this one where you have the airboss giving you commands every couple of seconds. You're focused on flying and listening. That's about it. Studies have shown that even in relatively calm situations, pilots spend about 30% of their time monitoring the outside environment. That percentage was probably lower in this case. On top of all of that, the accident P-63 was in tow behind 2 other fighters. This meant that the bulk of the pilot's cognitive abilities went to keeping a safe separation with the other fighters in front of him. While see and avoid was starting to fail these pilots, they were embraced in an aerial dance that was becoming more and more complex. In the lead up to the penultimate pass before the collision, the airboss was telling the bombers and fighters exactly what to do. They were flying a double dogbone path that kind of looked like this. The airboss told them to walk up to the B-17, then to break out left, then to follow the bombers to the right 90, then roll back, then get back on the 500-foot line, and then to trail the bomber.
Fighters, you can walk your way up to the B-17. I'm going to break y'all out after this. You're going to end up breaking left, so you're going to follow the bombers to the right 90 out, and then you're going to roll back in left and be on the 500-foot line if y'all want to set up an echelon for a break so y'all can get in trail.
Okay, say again for the fighters, that was not clear.
Fighters, go echelon right. Go to echelon right.
Okay, fighters, echelon right.
That's kind of a lot to take in one go. In fact, it was too much to take in. One of the fighters asked for clarification, and the only thing that was clarified by the airboss was the direction of the break. Then came the pass that would end in disaster. The 8 planes that would make up this pass were on a left 270-degree turn that would bring them to the start of the 2 show lines. The bombers had to fly the 1,000-foot line, that is the one further away from the crowd, and the fighters had to fly the 500-foot line, or the one closer to the crowd. To pull this off, the fighters would need to pass by the B-17 on the left and then pass in front of the B-17 to get into position for the fighters to fly the 500-foot line. This is where the lead fighter makes a critical mistake. He mistakenly believed that the airboss had cleared him to fly the 1,000-foot line. In reality, the airboss had cleared the fighters to fly the 500-foot line. So fighters 1 and 2 checked an ensured separation with the B-17 and pushed in front of them. But fighter 3, the Bell P-63, doesn't follow fighter 2 all the way. He starts the turn with fighter 2, but then his flight path straightens out a bit, almost as if he was headed for the 500-foot line like the airboss intended. But that took him directly into the path of the B-17. Neither plane saw the other coming. So, how did the airboss expect things to happen? Well, he mainly used 2 methods to keep his planes apart from one another. He would group planes together into a group and ask them to follow another plane. This is known as visual deconfliction. Then, the planes were asked to fly different lines, and that's known as lateral deconfliction. In this case, the airboss's intuition on where the planes would be failed him. Quote, thus, the NTSB concludes that the airboss's deconfliction strategy for accident performance, which relied on his real-time predictive assessment of airplane locations and the ability of the pilots to see and avoid other airplanes, was ineffective because the flight paths of the Boeing B-17G and the Pell P-63F converged as each pilot maneuvered toward their respective assigned show lines. End quote. But there's one final factor that led to this collision in Dallas: the way that they communicated. Remember, the airboss was in a controller and there was no standard phraseology for what they were doing. The airboss was throwing around so much information that some of the pilots had a hard time just keeping up with what they were supposed to do. You never make up an air show on the spot, and that is what this airboss was doing. You always rehearse, rehearse, and rehearse. The hard truth is, effective communication keeps people safe. Throughout the show, the airboss was using words like walk your way up, or that will work out, and come on through. What does that really mean? This was an environment where mistakes could be easily made and precision was of the essence. But the way that they communicated did not have that. Like I said at the start of this video, our community is a tight one, and I'm sure that at least some of the people watching this have a personal connection to this tragedy. This tragedy took the lives of Terry Michael Barker, Craig Hutane, Kevin Dimitri K5 Michaels, Daniel Alexander Reagan, Leonard Lloyd Len Root, and Curtis James Rowe. Blue skies and tailwinds, gentlemen.